G'day guys, how are we doing? Welcome to In Focus. Terence Crawford. Let's get into it. If you haven't been, or it's only our second show, of course. If you haven't watched this one before, this is where we delve into the career of a fighter. In this particular instance, it is Terence Crawford, and then we match him up against 10 other fighters from different eras that we think would be appealing, and we give our opinions and we vote on who we think wins. I've also done this on polls on Instagram, so I will go through the final results of those polls once we go through the actual matchup. So again, Terence Crawford, I've got 10 really good opponents for him tonight. If you've done the poll on Instagram or completed the poll, you would see that there's some pretty appealing fights in there, and you just I'll just spit that again. Mouth-watering fights, that's for sure. Before we get into the program or the episode, I've got a couple of people in the chat I'll go through. Big J, you've obviously got a bit on your mind. And also Glenn. We'll go for Big J for starters before we get into it. Completely agree with your assessment of Bud concerning pound for pound. I did have Bud at pound for pound number 5, by the way. Due to his lackluster performance over a novice in Madrimov and inactivity, Canelo, in a way, Bivol and Usyk breezed past him. Yep. And Glenn, evening all, following on from Monday night, Canelo and Tank still suck. Yeah, that's cool, mate. That's your opinion. That's good. I'll get one more opinion from you before I get on to Big J's comments there. Moving on from that, outside the obvious matchups like Leonard and Hearns, I'd love to see him versus Henry Armstrong. Yeah, well, one thing about tonight, and you will see, I think I did mention the other night when I sort of hinted at what we're going to do tonight, I didn't have Thomas Hearns in it. So if you're expecting Thomas Hearns to match up against Terence Crawford, we might make that just a number 11 or whatever, and we can just talk about it. Now, the reason I haven't got Thomas Hearns in this particular top 10 is that he did his best work at 154 and above. Now, I know he won the world title, the WBA title, in sensational fashion over Pepino Cuevas back in 1980, I think it was, or 81. And devastating puncher at welterweight. But, yeah, I think after he beat Cuevas, he only had, I think, a couple of defenses and then lost to Leonard and then went up to 154 after that. So I just think, look, you got to go through the key guys, in my opinion. And as great a fighter that Thomas Hearns was, as I said, I just think he did his best work above 147. So we might save Thomas Hearns for a couple of other episodes I've got coming up featuring some pretty good fighters as well. So yeah, just on that. And look, and with the Henry Armstrong thing, Glenn, you are right, mate. It'd be great to see Terence Crawford against someone like a Henry Armstrong. I just haven't done it, and like a Sugar Ray Robinson and those types of guys. This is not really an episode about him against the top pound-for-pound fighters of all time, even though that would be great. We can still debate about that. Maybe you can put in the comments about who you would think would win out of a Henry Armstrong and Crawford or Robinson and Crawford. But it's just different eras. It's just hard. And I just thought it's just easier sometimes to have the matchups around the sort of same era. So, again, it's not the all-time pound-for-pound. So don't come at me and say, where's Sugar Ray and where's Henry Armstrong? It's just 10 fighters of similar eras that would be great matchups. And look, in this instance here with Terence Crawford, who's had his biggest fights at 135 to 147, there are so many fighters in there. I would have loved to have put Hearns in there for starters, but also the likes of Vinny Pazienza, Ricky Hatton, these types of guys. I would love to have put them in there. Just haven't been able to find room, unfortunately, and you can only have 10. And as I said, I've had to just tick them off and eliminate some of the ones I would love to have seen him fight along the journey. So we'll get into a couple from Big J before we get into it. Where we got there? G'day, pound for pound. How are you there, mate? Welcome to the show. These are all over the place at the moment. So what do we got? Also, can we please stop the vibe that Canelo Crawford is a great fight? It's a one-sided mismatch that'll see Canelo beat the crap out of Bud, similar to Hearns versus Duran, all over in 3. Got to strongly disagree with that, Big J. I'm not saying that Canelo maybe doesn't dominate Crawford as the fight goes on, but I don't think there's any way in hell that he does a Hearns over Duran and knocks Crawford out in 3. I think Crawford will probably go surprisingly very well early. Not to say he's going to beat Canelo, but I think there's no way that Canelo is going to flatten Crawford. I can tell you that. That's your opinion, and that's cool. That's why we're here. What do we got there? Also, promotions for the Zoo fight. Yep, I'll talk to you about that with posters. Yeah, all right. So we'll just keep it to Crawford at the moment. I think that's the only one there. We've got John. G'day, John. 4 a.m. Wednesday morning in Central Texas. Crazy how much time difference from you. Yeah, well, welcome to the show, John. Great to have you along, mate. I have seen you've seen a couple of our the YouTube videos we've done. So, mate, it's 4 a.m. But, mate, welcome to the episode and have your say. This is one of your guys, Terence Crawford, American. I think where's he from? Omaha, isn't he? Nebraska. So probably is it down those neck of the woods? I'm not quite sure. One more from Glenn. Thing about Armstrong is his style that intrigues me. He just doesn't let you breathe. I've always thought he'd give Mayweather hell as an example. Yeah, it's just hard, isn't it? It's the same argument with Rocky Marciano. How would he go against the current day guys? And that's why I didn't have Marciano win against Usyk. It's just really hard. Different size. I know heavyweight's a lot different to these guys because weight divisions were in effect back then. It's not like Armstrong fought at welterweight and only weighed 126 pounds. I mean, the weights were the same. Heavyweight's just a bit different. So, yeah, I'm with you there, mate. But again, it's just hard. I'll just put it at that. It's hard to have guys of the current era against guys from way back then. Maybe, look, feel free to put in the comments there who you think would actually win. All right, well, let's get into it, guys. Again, if you haven't been part of this in the last couple of weeks, we'll go through his record here and where he's from and all that sort of stuff in a second. A quick overview of his career. Then we'll get into the 10 opponents and we'll let you guys vote on who you think wins and why. And I'll give you the polls from the Instagram results as well. So first of all, Terence Crawford. Terence Allen Crawford, actually. He was born in Omaha, Nebraska. And where's he got there? So he's promoted by, what's that, John? Yes, it is an evening show, mate. It is. Professional record, 41-0 with 31 knockouts. He has defeated 19 opponents in world title fights, 15 by knockout. He has, what do we got there? Record of 6-0-4 in lineal title fights. That's how you probably define a lineal title fight, I suppose. A record of 11-0 with 7 knockouts against former or current world titleists, secondary belts excluded. First to become undisputed in the 4-belt era at 140. First to become undisputed in the 4-belt era at 147. And first male to become undisputed in 2 weight classes in the 4-belt era. Has defeated 2 Olympic gold medalists in Yuriorkis Gamboa and Felix Diaz. And he's unified, as I said, they're unified the 140 and 147 pound divisions. And now he turned pro way back in 2008 with a first round knockout of Brian Cummings. That was in Denver. Got his first world title fight in England, of all places, where he won a 12-round decision over Ricky Burns for the WBO lightweight title. Defended twice after winning that belt, and they were against Yuriorkis Gamboa and Raimundo Beltran. Then went to 140, beat Thomas Dulom, I think it's pronounced. Had 6 more fights at 140, either defending or unifying the 140-pound belts. Then in 19, come on, then it's a bit early in the program to be getting off track like that. 2018, and I was actually at this fight at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. He beat Jeff Horn over 9 very one-sided rounds to take his WBO welterweight belt, and has since had 7 fights at 147, again, either defending or unifying the world welterweight belts. And his crowning moment in his career was that 9th round stoppage of Errol Spence Jr. in 2023. And since then has only had the 1 fight against Israel Madrimov when he added the WBO interim super welterweight title, 154-pound title, and also the WBA 154-pound title. And, of course, has got the fight lined up with Canelo Alvarez in September. So that is Terence Crawford in a bit of a nutshell there. And all that's left now is to go through the fights and give our opinion on who we think wins and why. So this is the first fight we're going to go to. Was probably one I sort of debated with about putting in, and maybe putting in a Pazienza or someone like that. But even Edwin Rosario is another one I would have loved to have put him in with. And now, if you don't know much about Edwin Rosario, just do a bit of research on him. He former two-time world champion, Puerto Rican. He's no longer with us, but gave the likes of Hector Camacho and Livingston Bramble and those types of guys great fights. So look at here. Here's the other one I had in the mix, but I've gone with this man for starters. I'm talking about Aaron Pryor. Now, Aaron Pryor was the IBF 140-pound champion back in the early 80s. And I just forgot, actually, by the way, to have all the box recs up, guys. So just forgive me if I have to type them up as we go. So he I think he was a WBA champion to start, and then went to the IBF and had the two massive fights with Alexis Arguello, and stopped him twice, and was one of the best 140-pound division fighters ever. So with the poll, if I can find that here, I'll get that up there. Normally a bit more organised than this. In the poll, pretty one-sided, this one. 90% went for Terence Crawford to beat Aaron Pryor. And, yeah, he's got an awesome resume, Glenn. That's for sure. That is Terence Crawford we're talking about. And, look, and Aaron Pryor. Nowhere near, obviously, what Terence Crawford is. But, yeah, he was a very accomplished fighter. Those two great wins over Alexis Arguello. Look, this is a tough one. This is, even though 90% of people went for Crawford to beat Pryor, I think this would be a very, very close and even fight. Go back, and if you're not familiar with Pryor, go back and see his fights with Alexis Arguello. Just a classic beatdown. I know Arguello was coming up in weight, but Aaron Pryor, and I think, Glenn, you hit it on the head there, mate. A bit of Armstrong in Pryor, coincidentally. Yeah, it's a good call. And, yeah, just a fantastic fighter was Aaron Pryor. Look, I'm going to go with Terence Crawford in this one. But as I said, it would not be an easy fight for Crawford. A very, very high work rate. Did Aaron Pryor, had a good jab, good time. He just had a really good kit of punches, and only lost, I think, his last fight ever in his career. And no one could get near him. And it's just unfortunate that he never really had any of those really good guys around him. I know there was talk at one stage that he was going to go up and fight Leonard and maybe even Duran as well. Never got those big fights, and Alexis Arguello was the best he could get. So, yeah, so it's again a little bit unfortunate that we never got to see Aaron Pryor in one of those fights. But if you haven't seen him, make sure you go to YouTube and check out the Hawk, Aaron Pryor. What's that, Glenn? Pryor is a very, very tough fight for anyone. Yeah, he is, mate. As I said, just unfortunately never got that opportunity. Let's go to fight number 2. This time it is the Macho Man, Hector Camacho. Record of 79-6 with 3 draws, 38 knockouts. He won the 130-pound title, the 135-pound title, and the 140-pound title to Hector Camacho did. I'm not sure whether he won a version of the welterweight title, unless it wasn't a recognised belt anyway. I think he lost to Whitaker and maybe Trinidad, was it? Did he lose to... I'm not sure whether he lost to actually Pernell Whitaker. No, he didn't. No, he lost to De La Hoya, Trinidad. Yep. So, what do you got there, Mark, in the chat there? I think people are overriding Crawford. He's in an area where the competition is weak. Okay, well, that's your decision there, mate. Glenn slightly lent to Bud against Pryor as well, by the way. But yeah, Hector Camacho, he was just one of the flashiest and most charismatic fighters of all time. And as I said there, he had 88 fights in his career. Unfortunately, he lost his life, what was about 7 or 8 years ago in Puerto Rico. But I remember at the time when I'll just go back, sorry guys, I'll go back to the homepage there. I remember when I was a kid, I used to love Hector Camacho. Actually, a few people my nickname was Macho because a lot of people thought I looked like Hector Camacho when I was a kid, which I took to heart. I loved it because Hector Camacho was one of my favourite fighters. And look, he probably, in the end of the day, didn't quite measure up to expectations. He was beaten by Julio Cesar Chavez, De La Hoya a little bit later on. Did beat Sugar Ray Leonard, though, as well. But just a great fighter with wins over... I'll just go to his early days and his record there. Bazooka Limon, I remember that one. Rafael Solis. Jose Luis Ramirez was another one. Actually beat Freddie Roach too, if you can believe that. Edwin Rosario, Cornelius Bolzer, Edwards, Howard Davis he beat as well. So Boom Boom Mancini, Vinny Pazienza. So a really good resume there. Had the 2 fights with Haugen that they split. Lost to Julio Cesar Chavez. Look, in this one, I'm going to go for Terence Crawford, but not with a lot of confidence. Hector Camacho had really good boxing skills. Unfortunately, though, he didn't have a lot of power. And I just think, even though Crawford's not a big banger either, I think when Crawford decides to plant his feet like we saw against Errol Spence, I think he can actually he can really put it on you and expose you if you haven't got the power. And I just think that Crawford would probably be the aggressor in this fight, and I just think he would outwork Camacho inside and get the job done. Now, 85% voted for Terence Crawford in this as well, that he would beat Hector Camacho. That's 85%. So a little bit more one-sided than what I would have thought, but still I would back Terence Crawford by decision in this fight. What do we got there? Glenn, Bud kills Macho. Too much skill. Batman says he'll go for Crawford as well. Macho had ridiculously fast hands, but I've still got Crawford. Yeah, with his IQ. Yeah, I'm with you there, mate. So, yeah, I've gone for Terence Crawford as well in a unanimous decision. All right, let's move on to fight number 3, and I'm sure this will cause some debate. Well, I think most of these fights will cause debate, but it's just fascinating. That's why I love to do it. And before I forget, g'day to Nectar of the Gods. Thanks, mate. G'day to you too. All right, next one is our man, Kostya Tszyu. And surprisingly, this one was pretty one-sided as well. I'll get to the results just in a second. But I'll bring up Costa's record. So he was 31-2, 25 knockouts. Of course, unified the 140-pound titles before the 4-belt era, and won that first belt over Jake the Snake Rodriguez. Beat the likes of Roger Mayweather. Hugo Pineda was a good lightweight contender. Lost that fight to Vince Phillips, but came back and beat the likes of Calvin Grove, Rafael Ruelas, Miguel Gonzalez, Julio Cesar Chavez, although I know he was past it, Sharma Mitchell, Zab Judah, and probably the best win of his career, I would probably think, Ben Tucky, Jesse James, Leha, good fights, and then, of course, was beaten by Ricky Hatton when he was pretty much at the end of his career. So what do we think, guys? We'll go to the poll, and again, this really surprises me. 75% said that Terence Crawford would beat Kostya Tszyu. Now, no, I'm sure a lot of people even voting for Crawford would have this close. I think this would be a really dangerous fight for Crawford. And I was really torn between these two guys. And look, I was torn between a lot of these fighters in these dream fights. But look, if I had to go for one, I'm going to go for Crawford reluctantly, or very, very cautiously, I suppose. I've got no doubt that Kostya Tszyu could win the fight. I'm just not sure whether he would have the hand speed and even the foot speed to go with Terence Crawford at 140. At that weight, Bud was something else. I know he's been something else at all weights, but it's a really, really tough one. We've got to pick one, and I'm going to go for Terence Crawford in a close 12-round decision. And what did I say there? 75% was the poll. OG says Crawford would have too much reach advantage. Yeah, good point, OG. Batman's really torn, very difficult. Yep. Pound for Pound King says, damn good fight, but I think Bud beats him on points. Glenn says Bud wins from the southpaw stance. Frankie D says Kostya would smoke him. Yeah, great fight at 140. G'day, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's that, Frankie? Maybe if Crawford was in a better era with all these champions, it may have brought out the best of him and might have gone up a level. Yeah, we never know, mate. So who have we got, guys? Let me know in the chat there. Tony says Terence over Kostya for me. Hate to say it, but Terence is on a different level. If Kostya lands flush, the big question is, Batman, if he lands flush. I'm just not sure whether we see something like the Zab Judah fight. I don't think Crawford's that reckless. I think he's just the ultimate sort of fighter as far as being patient, setting his guy up, planting the traps. I just think look, it's a tough one, but I'm going to go for Terence Crawford in a very, very close fight with Kostya Tszyu. So again, the what did I say? 75%. All right. Well, while you're deciding there, Batman, let's go to the next fight. And surprisingly, again, this was, in my opinion, pretty one-sided. We've got one more there. Stay Illen goes with Bud. All right, let's get to the next fight. The great Mexican, Julio Cesar Chavez. And no need to really introduce this guy, is there? I mean, just one of the greatest fighters of all time. Not just one of the greatest Mexicans of all time. He's probably regarded as the best Mexican fighter of all time. I'll just bring his record up in a second. Where are we? If I can find him, there he is, J.C. Chavez. All right, just before we get on to that, Flash Wilson says absolutely no chance Tim would beat Crawford then. Okay. Okay, well, we're talking about Kostya, but yeah, I think I understand what you're saying there, Flash. So you're saying if Kostya couldn't beat Crawford, then Tim couldn't. I'm assuming that's what we're getting at. Glenn says, what weight? I'm probably thinking, I think either, well, any of these weights, I reckon. Now, this is the thing with guys like Chavez and maybe maybe a Duran and maybe some of these other guys, Leonard, you'll see a little bit later. I'm probably thinking, well, probably not Leonard because he didn't fight at 135, but the guys that have fought at 135 up to 147, I think we can encompass the whole lot. So I've got Pernell Whitaker a little bit later. So the fighters that fought from 135 to 147, I'm not really picking a particular weight. Of course, when he fights Leonard, it's going to be at 147. But in this instant here, I don't think it matters whether Chavez, or maybe it does. Maybe Chavez was a different fighter at 135 and 140 than what he was at 147. Let's just say in this instance, this is 135 to 140 pound Chavez, not 147. I think he was way too small for 147. So let's just go with either 135 to 140. Okay, I think it's not going to make much difference. So who have we got there, guys? Batman says Chavez. Well, let's go to the polls. And the what is it there? Terence Crawford was the winner. 60% of the poll went for Terence Crawford to beat Julio Cesar Chavez. What do you got there, Tony? World champ, 3 divisions. What a legend, but I'm still with Terence. Glenn says the weight really matters, particularly Chavez. Yeah, as I said, mate, 135 to 140. Either one of those, either lightweight or super lightweight, not welterweight. I think Terence probably carried the weight a lot better than what Chavez did. So that's what we'll go with there, mate. Now, we'll just quick look at Chavez. 107 wins, 6 losses, 2 draws. And a lot of those losses came in the end or at the end of his career. Turned pro in 1981. When did he win his first world title? Against Roger Mayweather, I think. Oh, no, it was Ruben. Was it Ruben? No, Mario Martinez was his first win, TKO 8 in 1984. He did beat the likes of Ruben Castillo, Roger Mayweather. The list just goes on with this guy, fair income. I'll rattle off a few. Rocky Lockridge, Juan Laporte, Edwin Rosario to win the lightweight title. Absolutely bludgeoned Edwin Rosario. Bazooka Limon there as well, as I said before. Jose Luis Ramirez, Roger Mayweather again. Sammy Fuentes, Alberto Cortez, Meldrick Taylor. Who can forget that fight? Oh, and that is one I forgot. I forgot about Meldrick Taylor. Okay. Should have had Meldrick Taylor in there. I can't believe I forgot about him. We might do that just at the end as an add-on, I think, as a bonus. Might have to do a few quick ones, I reckon. Who else have we got there? We'll go through a few. Hector Camacho, Greg Haugen. Poor old Greg Haugen in front of 130,000 people in Mexico City, the poor bugger. Terence Ali, the draw with Pernell Whitaker. Frankie Randall, of course, a couple of fights. The other fight with Meldrick Taylor. Tony Lopez, couple-time world champion. And look, the list just goes on. The fights with Oscar De La Hoya. This guy is one of the probably the best examples of a Hall of Famer is Julio Cesar Chavez. All right, guys, so who have we got? As I said, the poll said 60%. Now, this is 135 to 140. I'm going to go with Chavez. I think like Chavez did against the likes of Meldrick Taylor, to an extent against Pernell Whitaker, definitely against Hector Camacho. He found a way against those really slick type of boxers to get inside and cut them off and rough them up and fight his fight. He was able to do it successfully against most guys, but just call this a gut feeling more than anything because, I mean, all these fights are so hard to pick. But I'm going to go for Chavez to out-muscle Terence Crawford over 12 rounds. Now, this is the Chavez that fought Edwin Rosario at 140, fought Hector Camacho at 140, fought Meldrick Taylor at 140. It was just a different beast. Was Julio Cesar Chavez? That's the 140 pounder that I'm looking at fighting Terence Crawford, and I think he can. And as you say there, Frankie, I think his relentlessness would be the factor, and I think he would get over the top of Terence Crawford. Glenn says Chavez at 135, but Bud at 140 and 147. Bud wins via KO. Chavez very hittable. Chin is very hittable. Chin as he goes forward every round. Bud's not a really big puncher though, orthodox. I don't think he's a big puncher. Chavez had an iron chin. I'm not sure. Look, whether he wins by stoppage as far as a referee maybe rescuing Chavez or the corner throwing the tail, who knows? I'm not sure that's what you're talking about, but if it's via KO, I must admit I can't see it, but that's cool. That's why we're here. Batman says lower weights, I've got Chavez, but at 147, obviously that changes, yeah. So I think we're all in agreement that at 135 to 140, it's a different fight than 147. So I'm going to go for Julio Cesar Chavez to out-muscle Terence Crawford and win by 12-round decision. All right, and I keep saying the next one's better than the last, but they're all as good as each other. Check out this next one. We have the Pac-Man, Manny Pacquiao. I'll bring up his record here. And this is, again, 135, maybe 140-pound version of Manny Pacquiao, not 147. I think the size difference at that weight would be the difference. Let's go with 135 to 140. I still think Manny at 140 was a devastating fighter. Of course, he knocked out Ricky Hatton at 140. Actually, it might have been a catch weight, that one, wasn't it? Hang on, I think I've got the weights here. Let me have a quick look. Ricky Hatton that was at 140, that fight. So, where are we? Pac-Man. I'll just go back to me there. All right. So, the Pac-Man, 62-8 with 2 draws. Now, it's just, again, hard to go through the accomplishments of Manny Pacquiao. Was it 8 divisions? He's won versions of world titles. I'll just quickly go through his greatest hits. There's too many of them, really, to be honest. There we've got Marco Antonio Barrera, Juan Manuel Marquez, of course, the 4 fights with him. Eric Morales, the fights with him. All those 3 fights. I think he fought Barrera twice or 3 times. I think it was only twice. De La Hoya, the Ricky Hatton fight, as I said. Miguel Cotto, Tonio Margarito, Shane Mosley, Timothy Bradley, the 3 fights with him. Who else we got there? Brandon Rios, Chris Algieri. Not that was a massive one. The loss to Floyd Mayweather. And then the wins over the likes of Jesse Vargas, Lucas Matisse, Adrian Broner, Keith Thurman. So very, very well credentialed is the Pac-Man. Now quickly to the poll. And again, this really surprised me. 60% went for Terence Crawford to beat Manny Pacquiao. I'll get to a couple of comments here and then we will get to my prediction. Batman says, Manny that destroyed Oscar and Hatton beats Crawford, in my opinion. Well, this is the fighter I'm going by, Batman. Now, no, Oscar was at 147. Hatton was at 140. But what did he weigh against Oscar? It wasn't much. Where is it? I think he would have put weights in his shorts, I reckon, Manny Pacquiao, for that fight. So he actually weighed 142. So the weight's at 147, although I think there's a catch weight at 145 by the looks of things. But he weighed 142. This is the Pac-Man that I'm going to base this fight on. So the one that beat Oscar, this is the one over that probably 2-year period where he beat Oscar De La Hoya, he beat Ricky Hatton, he beat Miguel Cotto, and then he beat Clottey, Margarito, and Mosley. Not so much Mosley. I thought he looked a bit sluggish in that, and that was at the full welterweight limit. So that brief period of a couple of years where he beat De La Hoya, Hatton, Cotto, Clottey, and Margarito. That is the Manny Pacquiao that I'm going to match up with Terence Crawford. What do we got here? Glenn, Manny at 135 to 140. I'm not sure anyone beats him at that weight. Pound for pound, King says, damn good fight, 135 to 140. Manny above that, it will lean towards... damn good fight, 135, 140. Manny above that will lean towards Bud. Yep, well, this is 135 to 140. I'm probably going to say 140 there, guys. Yeah, great fight. Pac-Man says Tony Clifton. Frankie says, good one. I'll go Pac-Man in his prime like a little pit bull. Batman, the speed and power combination at 140 for Manny was unbelievable. Well, I just think at 140, as good as Terence Crawford was at 140, I don't think, I can't remember who said it before, I don't think anyone touches Manny Pacquiao at 140. I think that was his weight. I think he would be far too everything for Terence Crawford, if I'm being honest. I think his hand speed would more than match Crawford. His foot speed would actually, I think, confuse Crawford. I don't think he'd be used to someone of Manny's ability with his footwork speed, with his speed with feet and hands, I should say. His volume of punches, the power of his punches, and I think Manny Pacquiao wins a clear decision over Terence Crawford. And look, I was going to say you could probably compare someone like an Adrian Broner. I know he's probably a poor man's version of Terence Crawford, but we could also put in guys like Keith Thurman. I know, again, he's probably not a Terence Crawford, but he did do well, apart from Mayweather. He did do well against fighters of a similar style as Terence Crawford. Timothy Bradley's another one. I don't care what people say about the first fight. Manny Pacquiao won that fight. So he's pretty much beaten Timothy Bradley 3 times. Some other fighters there. Who else have we got? Oh, and just obviously, well, yeah, I suppose you can't compare a Barrera or Morales to a Crawford, just different types of fighters. But and I'm not going to probably compare Shane Mosley. He's probably another one that could be sort of be thrown in there as being similar to Crawford. But I just think, Manny's speed, his power, his work rate would just be enough to outmuscle Terence Crawford. And I think Manny Pacquiao wins a 12-round decision. What did I say there? About 60% disagree with me. They went for Terence Crawford. All right, Orthodox. Pac-Man is the kryptonite of Bud at 145. He has every tools to beat Bud, because I believe there's no way can someone knock Pac-Man out. Or maybe at that weight, maybe not. Although, was it Marquez? No, that was a 147, wasn't it? That, what they were? No, that was, I thought it was sort of 143, 144, that fight. But, yeah, I'm not to say no one can knock Manny Pacquiao out, because obviously they did. But I just think at 140, he was just almost unstoppable, Manny Pacquiao. Yeah, Batman, blinding hand speed. Daniel Smart says, Pacquiao too quick on his feet. Yep, hey, thanks, pound for pound. Yep, get the likes up, guys. I really appreciate it. So I think the majority of people, did we get many predictions there, guys? I thought that it was just, what did I say? I said Pacquiao by decision. What else you got there? I think everyone's a bit torn over that one. All right, well, while you're thinking about it, guys, get the comments in the section there, in the comment section, and we'll move on to the next one, because you thought the last few were hard. We'll check this one out. Sweet Pea, Pernell Whitaker, the late great champion, arguably in the top 10 greatest fighters of all time, and unfortunately passed away a few years ago. So again, you thought that one was tough, guys. Wait till you see this one. What's that, Alpha Wolf? Your coach said Inoue will stop Pacquiao at 126 to 130. Well, maybe we'll do one with Inoue at some stage there too, mate. So Batman, sorry, he went for Manny. All right, so on to this one. Terence Crawford and Pernell Whitaker. All right, so we'll have a quick overview of Pernell Whitaker's career. 40-4 with 1 draw. Now, he won his first world title, or actually he got ripped off in his first fight against Jose Luis Ramirez back in 1988. And I can't believe that. If you haven't watched that fight, go and see it, guys, because it's the biggest rip-off you'll ever see. I know there's been a few out there, and poor old Pernell Whitaker was at the wrong end of some of them, but he did lose a highly controversial decision to Jose Luis Ramirez in 1988. When he got his next shot a year later, he didn't take any chances, and he completely dominated Greg Haugen to win the IBF lightweight title. And then had a rematch with Ramirez, beat him, and then went on a tear, beating likes of Freddie Pendleton, Azuma Nelson, a massive win. Juan Nazario was a good fighter. Jorge Paez, Harold Brazier, some really good fighters in there. Rafael Pineda, Buddy McGirt, Julio Cesar Chavez, that controversial draw. Beat McGirt again. Who else we got there? Lost that decision to Oscar De La Hoya, very, very close one. Lost a decision to Felix Trinidad and ended up getting stopped in 2001 in his last fight. But a sensational fighter was Pernell Whitaker. Now, as for the poll, in this one, only 40% went for Terence Crawford, 60% went for Pernell Whitaker to beat Terence Crawford if they ever fought. Let's get to a couple of comments there. We'll go back here to a couple of Manny Pacquiao ones. Frankie said Manny on points, relentless pressure. Mark said Manny, Madrimov feints gave Bud trouble. Yeah, well, that's a good point there, Mark. Oh, there was a Mark? Yes, it was. Pound for Pound King says, wow, great fight. I've got Sweet Pea. Tony says, 4-way world champion on with Sweet Pea. Now, this is that. Look, again, this is probably one. I don't think it matters whether it's 135 or right up to 147. I think both fighters have carried the weight the same way. It's not like we've got a small guy like Manny Pacquiao who probably slowed down a tad at 147. I think Pernell, just like Terence Crawford, would carry the weight really well up, or he did carry the weight up to 147, just like Terence Crawford did. So I don't think it matters, guys. 135 to 147. I don't think it makes much difference. Frankie says, yep, Whitaker 100% for me. Slick operator. John said, yeah, he was an artist in the ring. He certainly was, mate. Batman. That's a tough fight for both. Pernell's movement and balance make him so difficult to hit. Offensively, not a good finisher as Crawford. I see this going, points could go either way. Orthodox says, Sweet Pea. Glenn says, tough call, goes the distance, but I actually lean to Bud. Okay. Another very difficult choice. Well, I think, like all of you out there, I think that this would just be such a chess match. I think both guys would be looking to counter, would be probably pretty reluctant to lead for fear what would be coming back at them. Both lightning quick with great reflexes, great timing. Glenn says, I think Bud's patience gives him an edge. Okay, I'm going to go with Sweet Pea, guys. I think, look, I just don't think there would be many fighters in history that would beat Pernell Whitaker. He did lose 4 fights, of course, but one was a disputed loss to De La Hoya. He fought Trinidad, I think well past his peak, and the last one was just when he was fighting at middleweight and lost that fight, probably about 10 years after his prime. Batman says, ultimate chess match, agreed, yeah. So, look, I'm going to go, for Pernell Whitaker. In a decision win. I just think very, very similar fighters. I just think Pernell Whitaker's a better version. I just think he's the better fighter. And I think he wins, as I said, clearly, or not clearly, we'd be close-ish. I'm thinking 7-5, 8-4 in favour of Pernell Whitaker. But each round would be super close. But I just think Bud not quite at the level of Pernell Whitaker. Yeah, Batman, 2 masters, that's for sure. They're like father and son. Yeah, they fight pretty much the same way, don't they, Orthodox? Although Pernell didn't really switch much, did he? He was always in the Orthodox stance. Stay Ilan says, Bud adapts in fights. He does it for me. Okay, well, that's surprising. As I said in the poll, only 40% went for Terence Crawford. 60% went for, 60% went for Whitaker. 40% for Terence Crawford. All right, well, they don't get any easier, guys, because they're going to move on to the next one. Just keep the comments going there. It's always 20 or 30 seconds behind the stream, so put it in the chat and I'll read them out as we go. But we're going to move on to the next fight, and we're going to look at Terence versus Manos de Piedra, the Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. Now, this is, I'm going to say, at 135. I don't think, well, it could probably go up. No, I'll take that back. I think it doesn't matter whether this fight's at 135 or 147. Duran beat Sugar Ray Leonard at 147. This is probably where I'm going to cap it, though. I'm going to go up to the point where Duran beat Leonard at welterweight. Okay, so after that, no. Up to his lightweight, and then when he jumped up and fought Leonard, that is the Duran we're going to base this fight on. So a quick look at Roberto Duran. His final career record, 103 wins, 16 losses, 70 knockouts. So, of course, the undisputed, he was the undisputed lightweight champion. First loss, though, was against Esteban de Jesus back in 1972. Regained the title, then went up to 147 and beat Sugar Ray Leonard. Was 140, I was going to say, was 140 around back then? It would have had to have been. Yeah. But he beat Leonard in 1980 in Montreal. And then it was a pretty up and down career for Roberto Duran. After he lost the fight only 5 months later, Defended numerous times that lightweight title, by the way, guys, but I'm just sort of going up to the Leonard fight. He did lose to Wilfred Benitez, upset to Kirkland Lang, the loss to Hagler, Hearns, and we can just go through his career. Just one of those Hall of Fame fighters. You just don't really need to rattle off his career. But as I said, I'm basing this fight on the 135-pound version of Duran up to the 147-pound version that beat Sugar Ray Leonard, not the no mass version. This is the one that beat Roberto, because I reckon that was the best version of Roberto Duran, even though he had success for probably another 9 or 10 years after the Leonard fight. Up to that point, that was Roberto Duran at his best. So that's what we're going to base it on. Now, as for the poll, 80% went for Roberto Duran in this fight. Only 20% went for Terence Crawford. Batman says Duran. Pound for pound king says 135 and 140 Duran. Yep, Duran all day. Duran by landslide. Mark says Duran. John says Duran at 135 or 140. He was ridiculous. Can't go against my all-time fave. Duran says Daniel. Frankie says Duran at his peak. What an animal. Duran for me. And Tony says all Bud has to do is showboat and Roberto will get fed up and walk back to his corner and walk away. Yeah, well, I know we did that against Leonard, Tony, but I think there was a lot of extenuating circumstances in that fight. He wasn't fit. I just don't think he wanted to be there, and he never did it again, did Roberto Duran. So, look, in my opinion, I'm in agreement with everyone so far in the chat there. I just think Roberto Duran at 135 up to that Leonard fight at 147 was just simply in the top sort of 3, 4, 5 fighters of all time. Just an absolute beast at lightweight at 135. His timing, his power, his durability, his endurance, just everything. He had it all. And mainly what a lot of people talk about Duran. I know he's an animal. He was a beast. He was all these different things. But his ring IQ, I don't think I've seen many with superior ring IQ than him. Just such a smart fighter. He'd make you miss by a millimeter and then come back and hit you and knock you out. Just that type of guy. And while he wasn't overly fast with feet or hands, although at lightweight he did have a fair bit of speed, it was his positioning and timing and where he might take a little step to the right or a little step to the left just to set himself, because he almost knew what was coming next. And he knew what you were going to do before you did it. And he'd be there and he'd set that trap and bang, he'd get you out of there. It's just a sensational fighter was Roberto Duran. I think this one would be pretty one-sided. I think Roberto Duran, I'm not going to say stops Terence Crawford. Crawford's got great ring IQ as well. I just think Duran, look, it could end maybe, if it's going to end, it would be late. I think it might be, if this was a 15-round fight, which probably it would be, it could maybe end in the 12th, 13th, 14th round, something like that. But I'm just thinking at that sort of time of Duran's career, if Sugar Ray Leonard couldn't hold him off, there's no way Terence Crawford would, and I think Duran wins this one pretty convincingly. What's that, Glenn? Duran at 135. At 147, I think Bud doesn't try to prove his toughness like Leonard did. I think Bud outboxes him in a patient display of boxing. Yep. As I said, Glenn, this is the 135 and that one fight at 147 for Duran. But I get what you're saying there. Leonard tried the bravado approach and it didn't work. Bud obviously wouldn't be that silly. But I just think, again, the Duran, whether he fought with Duran or tried to box Duran at that particular time of his career, I just don't think anyone would have gotten near Roberto Duran. Batman says a different type of warrior. His experience wouldn't be matched, that's for sure. And Duran is Mike Tyson's favourite fighter. He certainly is there, mate. So again, the poll said 80% for Duran, only 20% for Terence Crawford. All right, we've got 3 fights to get through. And these are 3 pretty big ones. Let's start with the next fight, and it is the Golden Boy, Oscar De La Hoya. And this is probably another one we don't really need to worry about weights, in my opinion, because I think whether it's at 135 right up to 147, I don't think it matters. Even up to 154, I just don't think it matters. I just think you could put these guys at head-to-head from 135 or 140 or 147, or as I said, even 154. It just doesn't make any difference. This would be one hell of a fight. I'll just go back there. All right, so the record of Oscar De La Hoya, 39-6, 30 knockouts. Now, he won his first world title. I think it was it 94? Where was it? I'll bring it up there. 94. The WBO Super Featherweight title over Jimmy Bredal, that 10th round stoppage. And then went on to fight the likes of Jorge Paez, John Molina, Rafael Ruiz, Gennaro Hernandez, Jesse James Leija, Julio Cesar Chavez twice, of course, Pernell Whitaker, Miguel Gonzalez, Hector Camacho, Ike Corte, Obakar, Felix Trinidad, who he lost to in controversial fashion. Shane Mosley had those memorable fights with him. Arturo Gatti, Fernando Vargas, just keeps going on and on and on. Felix Stern, Bernard Hopkins, Ricardo Mayorga, Floyd Mayweather, and of course his last fight against Manny Pacquiao. Now quickly to the poll. Now this surprised me in this one as well. It's a little bit closer than what I thought. 55% went for Oscar De La Hoya to win this fight. 45% went for Terence Crawford. All right, so again, I'll get a couple of comments from the Duran fight. A man that made it from the beaches of Panama says it all, really. Frankie says, for this one, Golden Boy, 100%. Orthodox says, Oscar, too many punches thrown. He was too busy. I've got Oscar, unanimous decision. And Batman says, I'll go with Oscar. Look, I think this one would be a really, really close fight. I do. Now, again, this is sort of one, I'm going to we'll have to stick to a weight. Look, let's just say 135 to 147, anywhere between there. Let's take out the 154 because Terence has only fought there once. I'm going to go for Oscar De La Hoya, but this one would be a really close one. It really would. I think that Terence probably can be similar type of fighter to Floyd Mayweather, even though that was a close fight with Oscar and Floyd. I just think Terence would time Oscar pretty well. I think his foot movement might confuse Oscar a little bit as well. I just think Oscar's work rate would probably be the difference in this fight. Oscar fought at a really high pace. Terence really likes to fight at his own pace and take his time and really fight to his own tempo. I don't think he'd have that chance against Oscar De La Hoya. I think Oscar would be on him all the time. Oscar with good IQ and everything as well. And I'm just looking at the likes of, a Pernell Whitaker. I know that fight was close. Floyd Mayweather, both similar fighters to Crawford. And I thought Oscar didn't really have too many issues handling both those guys. Shane Mosley is another one, both close fights. So I'm not sure where you would rate Crawford against the likes of Mosley and Mayweather. But yeah, I just think Oscar De La Hoya wins this one by work rate. Not with a lot of confidence. I think this would be a close fight, but for me, Oscar gets the chocolates. Tony's going with Oscar. Pound for pound is going for Oscar on points. And Glenn says, Bud, not much in it, but Oscar's loss to Floyd makes me lean towards Crawford. All good, mate. So, all right, well, that just leaves two more fights, and these are, as you'd probably expect, the two hardest ones to judge. Actually, what have we got there? Hang on. Daniel Smart says, I got Crawford in a very close decision. Oscar really struggled with Winky Wright and traditionally had trouble with southpaws. Very good point there, Daniel. These fights are just so hard, aren't they? Just really hard to pick. All right, so next one. And if you thought the other 8 were hard, take a look at this one. We're going to go to Sugar Ray Leonard. Can you believe this fight? How good this fight would be? Now, this is obviously pretty easy. This would be the 147-pound version of Sugar Ray. We'll have a quick look at Sugar Ray in a second there. But what if just look at the poster there. Terence Crawford, Sugar Ray Leonard. Imagine that in real life. It would just be amazing. Like most of these fights, of course. So Sugar Ray Leonard, 36-3-1, 25 knockouts. The Olympic gold medalist, won his first world title back in, when was it? 79, when he beat Wilfred Benitez by stoppage over 15 rounds. Lost it to Roberto Duran only a couple of fights later. Regained it, against Duran. Then moved up and beat Ayub Kalouli for the 154-pound title. Had that epic fight with Thomas Hearns in 1981. Then only had 2 more fights before 1987 when he came back and fought Marvelous Marvin Hagler to win the world middleweight title. Then won the super middleweight and light heavyweights titles against Donnie Lalonde. Had that controversial draw with Thomas Hearns. The third fight with Duran and then those two unfortunate losses against Terry Norris and Hector Camacho. So Leonard's probably one of those fighters, I think, that we never really saw the best of him. And we look at Mike Tyson, we look at Muhammad Ali as well. Look at that fight between 1981 and 1987. Only fought twice. Now, the Bruce Finch fight was the one. It was only, about 5 months after the Hearns fight. He knocked him out in 3 rounds. But then he was out of action for over 2 years and had that unimpressive fight with Kevin Howard, and then was out for 3 years before he fought Hagler. So I reckon we've missed out on up to 5 years of the best Sugar Ray Leonard. I know he had the retina issues, the detached retina, but it's just unfortunate that, Tyson went to prison. Muhammad Ali was barred for not going to the war. But I reckon we've missed out on 4, if not 5 years of the best of Sugar Ray Leonard. And it just amazes me how much more we could have seen of Sugar Ray, and we just didn't. So as for the poll results, this is probably not one that's too unexpected. 65% went for Sugar Ray Leonard. Only 35% went for Terence Crawford. So who we got there, guys? Batman says Leonard all day. Pound for pound King says Sugar. He was a different beast. Tony Clifton says, sorry, boys, I can't decide. Can I submit a draw as an answer? Draw for me. No, Tony, you can't have a draw. Although, geez, this fight is so evenly matched. It's just, it's too close to call, isn't it? Batman says, Sugar wasn't discovered as some sparring partner. Sugar talent jumped out. No way to hide him. Yeah, good call. Batman also says, yep, I definitely got Ray beating Crawford, but Ray was one of the best I've ever seen. No shame in losing that fight. Frankie says, Sugar on points, too slick. I agree with you, Frankie, and Batman and everyone else who voted there. I think that, I just think Sugar Ray at welterweight was just, I won't say he's unbeatable, but you go back and look, he's a different type of fighter that he was later in his career. I know he had to utilise his skills to beat Hagler and a really good game plan to beat Hagler, but look at when he was a 147-pound fighter. Just so fast, underrated power as well. Very, very good puncher at 147. His hand speed, his foot speed, his ring IQ, his foot movement, just everything that he had in the ring. I just think, look, as much as I think Terence Crawford is a fantastic fighter, Sugar Ray was just better. It's as simple as that. And I think that Sugar Ray Leonard would have won this on points by either 12 or 15 round decision. You name it, doesn't really matter. I think Sugar Ray Leonard beats Terence Crawford on points in what would have been just a fantastic fight. Glenn says, he was so complete as a fighter, blinding speed, and a bona fide killer. Just special. Well, that's the thing too, Glenn. Go back again and look at his fights at 147. He was a killer. Now, no, he's got the nice smile, or the sparkly smile, or whatever you call it, and the matinee idol looks, and all the Hollywood looks, whatever it might be. But when he had someone hurt, he was a great finisher. He got him out of there. Go back and look at his early highlights on YouTube. He got you hurt, he got you out of there. And almost did it with a smile on his face, didn't he? He was a very, very good puncher at that weight, and as I said, a very, very good finisher. But in this instance, I don't think he would have the opportunity to get Crawford out of there. Crawford's IQ, while it is very similar to Sugar Ray's, it's just not quite there, which is why I'm going to go for Sugar Ray on points in this one. Tony says, Sugar Ray, no Bud to win. Hang on. No, I'd say in between. So you've gone for Sugar, then you've gone for Bud. Got to decide there, Tony. Who you got there, mate? Daniel says, got to be Leonard, surely. Well, there's a lot. Well, what do I say there? 35% disagreed. They went for Terence Crawford, Daniel. But I didn't really have much hesitation in this one. I thought Sugar Ray all day by points. Yeah, Batman, too fast, too sharp, too talented. Kane says, hard to go against Sugar Ray. Glenn says, what's that? I actually think he stood. Oh, he stops Bud. Okay, yeah, well, not going to argue with that, Glenn. He look, as I said, mate. He's got the Hollywood looks and the flashy style in the ring, but he could punch and finish. So yeah, I think Sugar Ray for me. I'm not going to say he stops Crawford. I think Crawford's too clever for that, but I'm going to go for Sugar Ray on points. So keep the comments coming there. We've got one more to get through, and this is arguably the best one of the bunch, and maybe one that maybe could have happened. Well, wouldn't have happened, of course, but within about 3 or 4 years that it could have been a possibility. And the one I am, of course, speaking of is Floyd Money Mayweather. Or was it Floyd or Pretty Boy Floyd Mayweather? Which one is it going to be? Now, Floyd Mayweather, 50-0, 27 knockouts. Won his first world title. When was it? In 1998, I think it was. Yeah, it was. It went to the Olympics, had that disappointing loss there, beat Gennaro Hernandez, and then just went through the division. Some of the guys he beat, Diego Corrales, just Jose Luis Castillo, of course, those 2 fights with him. Philip Ndu was a good fighter. DeMarcus Corley, Chiro Gatti, Shamba Mitchell, Zab Judah, Oscar De La Hoya, Ricky Hatton, Juan Manuel Marquez, Shane Mosley, Victor Ortiz, Miguel Cotto, Canelo Alvarez, Marcos Medina twice, Manny Pacquiao, Andre Berto, and we won't really count the Conor McGregor fight, will we? But what a super champion he was, and what a fight this would have been. Thanks, Pound for Pound King. Yeah, get the likes up. Yep, we've got about 30 to 35, there's a 32 people, 33 people watching at the moment. These are sort of the episodes that we get more views after the fact. But again, I really appreciate everyone tuning in live. It's great to have live feedback. It's awesome. All right, so on that last fight, by the way, Tony actually went for Bud Crawford to beat Sugar Ray Leonard. Batman says Floyd over Terence Crawford. Orthodox has Floyd. Glenn says Bud beats Floyd. Well, there you go. Pound for Pound King says both versions of Floyd beat Bud. He just adapted so well in the fight. Batman says Floyd a different level to anyone Crawford has been in with by some distance. Daniel, this one might just be the closest one yet. I'll say Floyd by split decision. And Stay Ellen says he would have loved to have seen this fight. Yeah, you and me both, mate. Now, as for the poll votes, 60% went for Floyd Mayweather to win this fight. Only 40% went for Terence Crawford. Batman says Floyd at his best boxes Crawford's ears off. And Tony says Mayweather. Glenn says, okay, Floyd 135 to 140, probably, but Bud at 147 convincingly. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. What do you got there, Orthodox? I've got Floyd, but not that easy because the speed beats timing. And Crawford is known for his accuracy and timing. He is Orthodox, but in my opinion, he might be known for his timing and accuracy, but geez, they don't come much better than Floyd Mayweather in that category either. Look, this is probably similar for me to the Sugar Ray Leonard fight. I think Terence Crawford is a brilliant fighter. He has everything. I just think that Floyd Mayweather, again, does it better than Terence Crawford. I think Floyd Mayweather, for me, is the smartest fighter I've ever seen. And I know that will be controversial for a lot of people out there, especially the ones that aren't particularly fans of Floyd Mayweather. I think he's the smartest fighter I've ever seen, and that includes all the all-time greats. I really do. And as good as Crawford is, we've just seen it with Mayweather so many times, so many fighters that we thought would give Mayweather problems. And I'll go back to, Manny Pacquiao is probably the main one. Canelo, although I know he was young and all that sort of stuff. I can go right through them all there. But I just think all the fighters that were supposed to give Floyd troubles just couldn't. And you look at the one fighter or the fighters that really did give Floyd troubles, and maybe even some thought he was a little bit lucky to beat with a Marcos Medina. Castillo was another one. There's even a few that thought maybe Miguel Cotto maybe did enough over Mayweather. I don't think he got anywhere near it, to be honest. But they were different types of fighters to Terence Crawford. They were the ones that really liked to get inside and rough Floyd up and that sort of stuff. Terence Crawford wasn't that type of fighter. And the other boxers that tried to outbox Mayweather and outsmart him and maybe put their IQs up against Floyd Mayweather, they all got outboxed easily. And I just think in this instance, it wouldn't be any difference. I just think Terence Crawford, the great fighter that he is, I just think he just wouldn't have enough to beat Floyd Mayweather. And again, I've got Floyd Mayweather on points. And whether that's at 135, 140, or 147, I think Floyd Mayweather gets the job done. All right, a couple of comments there. Floyd more accurate with better timing. This isn't the plotter Spence. 100% Batman. Still with Batman or 12-0 Madrimov. Yeah, this is Floyd Mayweather. How many big nights Crawford had? 2 or 3. Floyd ran boxing. Floyd all day. Yeah, I'm with you, Batman. This is probably, for me, probably the easiest fight of all of them, if I'm being honest. I think Floyd Mayweather just had better everything than Terence Crawford. He was just something special. He could just adapt and change the fight up. He did pound for pound. He just, as I said, just the most complete and smartest fighter I think we've ever seen. And how many times do we see it in his fights where he would change tactics, not just mid-fight, but mid-round, he would change it. Just one of the best to ever do it. And I really hope, and I'm sure it will be the case as time goes on, people will just recognise more and more what a great fighter that Floyd Mayweather was. I know he got a bad rap for the McGregor fight. A lot of people didn't like Floyd. I keep all that out of it. I'm not going to ever let that get in the way of my judgment. Floyd Mayweather, to me, is in the top 5 pound-for-pound fighters of all time, and I think he beats Bud Crawford. Glenn, Leonard is a level above Floyd. Imagine what he would have done against Medina. Yes, look, that might be a fight for a different time, Glenn. Maybe we should put Floyd Mayweather up in one of these episodes and put all these greats against him. It'd be pretty fascinating, wouldn't it? We could probably do that. Look, at this is the good thing about this episode or this type of show is it's infinite the amount of fighters we could put up. So maybe we'll put Floyd Mayweather up and maybe we could put him in with the likes of Henry Armstrong and Sugar Ray Robinson and all those types of guys and see how he would go. Lyndon, did you think Castillo beat Floyd? Honest opinion. No. I thought Floyd just edged it. I actually did this in another series I used to do, Daniel, and if you want to go back and check it out, I did a series of shows called What's Your Verdict, and I went back and went through a lot of the real disputed and controversial fights of the past and scored it as we went. So I can't remember the exact scores I had, Daniel, but I reckon it was a very, very close win to Floyd, like really close. But I think I did have him edging it. I just don't think... Look, Castillo got a lot of plaudits for probably negating Floyd and being very, very competitive. I just don't think he did enough to win. It's a little bit like the Medina fight. Medina was great in the first fight. I still just don't think he did enough to win. I know a lot of people disagree, and that's fine. But you ask my opinion, I think my honest opinion is Floyd still did enough to just edge out that fight. Excuse me. What's that, Kane? Would have been a great fight. Floyd at 135, Crawford at 147. They would have been, mate. Batman says, the Floyd that destroyed Gaddy or Wash Marquez beats him, no doubt. Yep. And makes Crawford look like everyone else. I agree. Pound for Pound King says he was like 4-1 or 5-0. Sorry, what's that? He's like 4-1 or 5-0 against Medina, but quickly turned the fight around. Yep. Most definitely. Batman. Floyd says Batman. Frankie says Floyd is the upgraded version of Bud. Good fight, but just the next level. Tony says Floyd rated himself higher than Ali. Well, that's the opinion he had, Tony. I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not. I'm just not going to do it. I mean, Ali was a great fighter and a great champion and everything else. I don't think he was a better fighter than Floyd. And now, come at me. I'm just saying he was the greatest for a lot of different reasons and purely just his boxing ability. The greatest in all sorts of different things. But I think Floyd Mayweather was just as good as fighter as what Ali was. Was that Orthodox? Thurman and Bud hopefully soon. Yeah, you never know. Batman. Tony, precisely the mindset needed to get to the top level in sport. Yep, that was about Floyd rating himself higher than Ali. Well, that's why he called himself TBE, the best ever. I'm not going to dispute it. I'll say it. The likes of Sugar Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Robinson, Henry Armstrong, you name them. Harry Greb, you name all the best fighters. I just think Floyd is up there. 50-0 says it all. And regardless of if you want to fine-tooth his record or fine-tooth comb his record, go through it. I know you could go through anyone's record and pick holes in them. You really could. But that's now that this is the conversation. I'm going to do Floyd. It's not going to be next, but it'll be the next couple. I'm going to put Floyd Mayweather up against some of the greatest, and we'll see how he would have went. Some really good fights there as well. So I'm just sort of getting a few current day fighters for starters, and then we can go back and revisit guys like Floyd and Manny and Oscar and all those types of guys. All right. Nectar of the Gourd says, I think Bud would be a chance against Pretty Boy, but Money Mayweather would be too elusive. Good call, Nectar. So which one is it? Again, I don't think it matters whether it's 135 to 147. I'm going to probably say Well, Floyd wasn't at 135 for long, was he? Let's have a quick look. He was there. Where was it? He went up against Jose Luis Castillo. That was the fight he went up for that WBC lightweight title in 2002. So then he had another three fights at 135. So it's probably hard to probably say that fight. I'm not going to count that one. I'm going to say, probably going to say 147 Mayweather. I'm going to go for Money Mayweather, not Pretty Boy Floyd Mayweather. How many fights did he have at 140? 3 fights at 140 as well. So we're going to go for 147, guys. I think that's the one. That's where he was at his peak, was 147. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, about 17, 18 fights at 147. Throw in a couple of the catchweight fights as well, the Canelo, McGregor, De La Hoya. Still had at least maybe 15 fights at welterweight. So that's the one I'm going to put up against Crawford, the Money Mayweather. And I think if that is the case, then it's just Floyd Mayweather Jr. for me every day at 147. I think not even a conversation for me. I did say the poll results did nice, 60% for Mayweather and 40% for Terence Crawford. All right, a couple of more comments there. Either version of Floyd beats him, says Batman. Kane says Duran would wreck Floyd. Okay, well, we're going to put him up in a couple of weeks' time, Kane. We'll put Floyd Mayweather up and see how he rates against the Durans and Leonards and Hearns and all these types of guys. And Zhu and Chavez, all these guys. Daniel Smart says, did Floyd duck Zhu? Many believed he did. Well, Glenn Jennings has actually commented on this, Daniel. He did actually, I think it was actually, we did a dream fight between Floyd. Was it Floyd and Zhu? Was it? Anyway, I can't remember what video we did, but Glenn Jennings actually commented on it and said they were actually in talks. No, it wasn't Floyd. Sorry, I take that back. It was Oscar De La Hoya. It was going to be Oscar and Kostya. But for Floyd, no, I don't think so, mate. I just don't think there was that many fights around him, apart from maybe Kostya. So when was that? So he fought at 140. His last fight was in 2005. So yeah. That was for the WBC Super Lightweight title. So where was Kostya at that stage? He was probably getting retired by Ricky Hatton, was it? Anyway, you can check that out for yourself. But no, I don't think so. Well, maybe. Who knows, Dan? I don't know. I got no idea. But I think by the time he went up, Kostya was pretty much way past his best, I think, wasn't he? So Glenn says Money versus Bud, absolute chess match. I think Bud's power the difference. Okay. Batman says agreed, easy work, as Floyd would say. Yep, that's that at 147. That Floyd Mayweather gets the job done over Terence Crawford. Now, before we exit out of tonight's episode, a quick one. If you are a Terence Crawford fan, just to follow on with what I said, I think on Monday night, Terence Bud Crawford is coming to Australia, and he'll be here next month. So he's being bought here by Grant Tassie Brown. I've got the details right here. I'll just quickly, these are the little poster you're going to see very, very soon. Was that Dan retired in 05? Yeah, that was after Ricky Hatton, wasn't it? Yep. All right, so it's at the Melbourne Pavilion. This is the Melbourne one. There are shows in Sydney and Brisbane, but this is the Melbourne one if you're in the area. I'll give you the more details on the Sydney and Brisbane ones as the details come to hand. But the first one, as I said, next month. Hasn't got the exact date, but I'll let you know. May 2025, face-to-face with the champ. It says here, join us for an exclusive experience as Terence Bud Crawford visits Australia for the very first time. Now, it's at the Melbourne Pavilion. So you're going to need to probably get a table of mates together for this one because it's going to cost you $5,000. Now, it's a table of 10. All right, so you pretty much may as well say for $500, you get all-inclusive 3-course meal and your alcohol package. And you'll get a meet and greet with Terence Bud Crawford as well as a personalised photo with him as well. So there's only limited tables available. When it's officially announced, I'll let you know what Tassie Brown you'll have to contact for tickets, and I'll release his phone number once we get a little bit closer. I'm not sure whether he's going to have a website to go to as well, but that is Terence Bud Crawford coming to Australia next month. So keep a lookout for that. And Grant Tassie Brown just doing his thing. So keep a look out for that one. All right, get a couple more comments before we call it a night. Orthodox says, if Bud Canelo won't happen, what do you think about Fundora? Well, it is going to happen, Orthodox. That is pretty much locked in stone. What do I think about Fundora? Very, very limited there, mate. And I think as soon as he fights probably one of the real top liners, I think he might be in a bit of trouble. Yeah, Daniel. Yep, Tassie, a man. He gets it done. Well, hey, he's just one of those guys. If he says he's going to do something, he just does it. So good on him. He's also talking about the WBC convention coming to Australia next year. And that's going to be a massive thing to pull off because you've got to bring in all the officials and fighters and everyone that's to do with the WBC and try and get some funding from the government and all that sort of stuff. So not going to be easy, but I tell you, if anyone can get it done, Tassie Brown can because he just makes it happen, doesn't he? Tassie, he thought Fury beat Usyk. Well, you got to remember, Tony, he's I think he did a interview with Tyson Fury or something, and he's a big fan of his, and I don't know what it was. I think he pretty much had to say what he had to say just to keep the peace. I don't think he really believed that, but anyway. What's that, Orthodox? Oh, no, that's the next one. All right, now, you mentioned Canelo there, Orthodox. So speaking of him, we're going to put him up next. So next week is going to be Canelo Alvarez. Okay, now he can be from probably 154 to 168. I'm not really going to worry too much about 175. Even at 154, I reckon we could probably limit Canelo to 160 to 168. And look at the names you could roll out there. Well, the big ones straight away. Hagler, Hearns, Duran maybe, Leonard maybe. He only had... Well, he did have a few fights at sort of 160 to 168, didn't he? But, you got Oscar De La Hoya. So that's probably the fight I'm looking forward to the most. Oscar De La Hoya. So many great fighters. Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones Jr. Actually, I think I wrote down some fights with him. I haven't made a 100% decision on who it's going to be. But, all right, so these are some of the ones I was looking at for Canelo. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Roy Jones Jr., Bernard Hopkins, Thomas Hearns, Julian Jackson, Oscar De La Hoya, Carlos Monzon, Joe Calzaghe, Nigel Benn, and I'm sort of torn between maybe a Chris Eubank or a Mike McCallum or one of those, even a Terry Norris, although he was more at 154. Just some great, great fights there. So let us know your thoughts. And if you've got someone you want me to put up to do this with or about, let me know as well, and we'll pencil that in at some stage. To do an episode on them. So Canelo Alvarez next week and look at some of those fights. And we'll put Floyd Mayweather in as well over the next few weeks as well. Glenn says Canelo still sucks. Yep. Glenn, Canelo McCallum at 154. Yeah, 154. Or if it's at 154, Glenn, I'd probably throw in Terry Norris in there as well. Julian Jackson was a devastating 154 pounder as well. So just some great fights. This is what's great about it. And even with Oscar as well, to have him in there with Hearns and Leonard and Hagler and Duran and just some great fights. That's why I love doing these episodes. Tony, can you do Diamond Dale Wisman next? Nah, sorry, Tony. Can't do him, unfortunately. No, in a way, not too bad. Yeah, we'll look at some of the fighters there. I think I did quickly one on him as well, just threw a few names around. Some guys for him, there'd be Carlos Arate. Actually, one I was going to do is our own Jeff Fennick. Just put a bit of an Australian flavour on it. There's some ripper fights for him as well. But I had someone like Carlos Arate. Jeff Fennick was in there as well. This is for Naya in a way. Wilfredo Gomez, Ruben Olivares, Marco Antonio Barrera, Guillermo Rigondeaux, Eric Morales, Lionel Rose, our very own, Johnny Tapia, I think would be entertaining. And probably one of the greatest of all time that doesn't get a lot of mentions these days is the great Ed Joffrey. I think that's how you pronounce it. Do some research on him as well. So there's lots there. I thought Lomachenko might have been in there as well, but I think he started at featherweight. So we can't sort of put him in the mix. But how good would Lomachenko and Inoue be? So anyway, give me your thoughts on who you want, and we'll pencil them in as we go. Yeah, Daniel Diamond Dale. He's a legend, Diamond Dale. Been around the fight scene for some time. Batman says both two of the only four guys to win titles, 154 to 175, the other being Hearns and Leonard. Yes, he was, mate. Yep. Triple G and Hagler. Wow. Well, Triple G is another one I'd love to do with. Imagine Triple G or against Hagler. as well, but also the likes of Oscar, Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones Jr. Just so many great fights. Salvador Sanchez is another one, orthodox. Well, geez, who would you have there? I'd have at featherweight. Well, Lomachenko you definitely put in there, wouldn't you? That was the featherweight. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look through them orthodox, but he would be good, mate. And I'll go through and see what we can come up with. But we might do Canelo next. I think we're going to do maybe Jeff Fennick after that for an Aussie flavour, and then we might go Mayweather or in a way or someone or a Triple G, Salvador Sanchez, one of those guys. But keep the suggestions coming, guys. But I think that's going to do it for tonight. Really appreciate everyone that tunes in, whether it's live or after the fact, either on YouTube or on Spotify. But it's always good talking boxing with you. I've got a few things in the works. I really like the idea of the debate as well, and a few other bits and pieces I'm looking at as well. The other one, actually, I am going to do in the upcoming weeks as well is the greatest dream fights of all time in each division. So you got some suggestions for that, let me know. So, guys, hope you have a ripper night, and we'll catch you in the next episode of In Focus. See you then.